Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
And I am back, and joining us now is our special guest for tonight, Wafa Khan.
Hi, Rick. How
Hello.
are you?
I'm just fine. Very nice to meet you.
You as well. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
Oh, and my pleasure, my privilege, really. I'm very excited to speak with you because
I
we've been
am as
talking a
well.
lot about, especially immigration, here on the program. And I know that that's one of the areas of specialty that we're going to talk about tonight. So, really excited about this.
Hmm.
Let's,
I
first of
am
all,
as well. I'm looking forward to it.
yeah, let's just first of all get you to introduce yourself and tell people about the law firm that you represent.
Sure, yes. So my name is Wafa. I am a lawyer. I graduated from the University of Ottawa about 2 years ago, so I've been in practice for about a year now. My business partner and I, Mr. Sehgal, we opened a law firm, which is Khan-Sehgal Law, a couple of months ago. So we specialize in immigration, real estate, as well as civil litigation and family law. So we're starting up, and we're looking to, service everyone across Ontario, across the globe as well. Immigration is a very interesting area of law because you get to service not just your Canadian citizens, but you get to service everyone around the world. And I think that's what really sets us apart, and what we're trying to achieve here.
Yes. So, are you based in Toronto or London or
So our
both?
offices are based in Toronto, but we provide services virtually. So if you or someone you know is looking for a lawyer, a paralegal, any kind of legal service, we're able to provide those services within the entire province of Ontario.
Okay, and you've graciously joined us here this evening, and as we explore these issues, I'm sure that we may even have a couple of people call in this evening to maybe ask some questions and get some tips from you. Let's start with some of this immigration stuff because this is an important issue for Canada. We're
Mhm.
growing as a country. We're bringing more and more people in from all over the world. So how are you servicing the new Canadians who are coming in?
So what we're trying to focus on is not doing mass immigration. I know that's an issue that a lot of people think is unfair because we're not focusing on Canadians, the Canadian economy. So what we're trying to do is work with businesses. So businesses, if you have a company that you run, a partnership, and you're looking for an individual to hire, but you cannot find them in your local area, there's nobody qualified in Canada. What we're doing is we're trying to work with those businesses to find qualified candidates overseas. And we help you liaise with that individual. We help you with the entire process from start to finish on bringing over a qualified individual from anywhere across the world. So that's something that we're really trying to focus on is ensuring that businesses in Canada are allowed to grow. And we're supporting the Canadian economy. At the end of the day, that's all we all really want is to ensure that we're helping our neighbors, our friends, and that's our main focus is business immigration.
So you're really focused on bringing quality people here who have skills and a lot to contribute to their communities and to whatever profession it is that they become involved with.
Absolutely, yes. So for us, it's more about the quality of people versus the quantity. So right now, I'm sure everyone's aware there's a high shortage of physicians and nurses right now in the hospitals. There's an immense shortage of that in Ontario, especially. So we're trying to bring over those people that are qualified that can come here, contribute, help citizens of Canada, help people here, um, and just kind of make it accessible for everyone to get the help and then the assistance that they deserve and that they really, really need.
What are some of the unexpected challenges that people who are thinking of moving to Canada to take advantage of these opportunities? What are the unexpected hurdles that they're encountering?
I think the one of the big things right now is a lot of people are Googling um, assistance for immigration, right? And they come across individuals that have really great websites, but they're not actually licensed to provide those types of immigration services in Canada at all. And right now, there's a whole issue in the media about these so-called consultants, if you will, being caught. Um, and they're illegitimate. They cannot provide these services, but they are. So a lot of people are using them because they're ultimately more cost effective in the beginning. These people get caught, you're out of your money, your application goes nowhere, and you're kind of stuck. So what do you really do, right? And so I think a lot of people are falling into traps of individuals that they think are licensed, but they're actually not licensed to provide any of those services.
It's interesting. I had a friend out in Alberta who was telling me about someone that they know, a roommate who was a new Canadian, but he was using one of these organizations and he was having a lot of trouble. It was ended up costing him a lot of money. How do you identify or determine if you're dealing with a legitimate organization to help people actually come into the country properly?
So there's two individuals that will be licensed that can provide those services. One is a lawyer. By default, lawyers are able to provide those services. And if you're looking specifically in Ontario, the Law Society of Ontario has a directory page. You can type in the individual who is the lawyer, that you can type in their first and last name, the city that they work in, and it will tell you if they're licensed, if they're actively able to practice, and if they're in good standing or not. The second one is immigration consultants. So these are people that go through special education to achieve a certain status and qualification. So these individuals, they're registered with the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants. So same thing, you can see if these individuals are registered and if they're qualified. So the best way to find out if you're working with someone legitimate or a business that's legitimate is to check the name of the individual that you're working with.
Okay. You say do you work with the businesses as well as the people who want to emigrate here?
Yes, so we take on, from the Canadian side, it would be, for example, corporate clients we could take on. It could be something as small as a mom and pop shop, really, really big corporations. If there's someone overseas who sees a job in Canada that they're qualified for, we can also work with those individuals overseas as well. So we're kind of servicing everybody at the same time.
I see. So, what challenges would, say, a company have on the Canadian side?
There's a lot of challenges. A lot of it would be regulatory issues. The process itself is a little bit more complicated. Businesses, they need to show that they've made attempts to try and locate someone within the area, within Canada, within the vicinity that they operate in, that's qualified for that position. And that's the tricky part, is showing the Canadian government that, I've spent time, I've spent money, I've spent resources looking for someone, and I've not been able to find anyone. And this person overseas is the one that's qualified. So I do need to bring them. That's the trickiest part, I would say, of trying to prove this and working as a corporation to bring someone over.
Right. And so your services would actually help to expedite the process, right? Because you're professionals and you know the process, so you know exactly how to make this stuff happen in an efficient way.
I would hope so. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, is streamline everything, make it easier for everyone. Of course, you can try and do it yourself, but it's very, very costly. It's very time consuming as well. So you end up losing a lot of valuable time trying to figure it out yourself.
Right. Now you also are dealing with some other areas that I think are also of growing concern to a lot of people. Family law, for
Mhm.
instance, and real estate law. Like, can you tell me how you're what's changing on the family law front? Because we're seeing families in general, take on different forms these days. Our culture, our society, our demographics are all changing.
So I would say in family law, what I'm noticing particularly is a very high number of divorces. And I'm not talking uncontested, I'm talking really nasty divorces. And I think, a lot of this has to do with the last 4 years. We've all been forced to stay inside with certain people. And I think that's really caused a rift in a lot of relationships. So with family law, I'm noticing there's a lot more longer, time consuming, more expensive divorces coming out of it. And the other thing is that the rights of children have really, really developed over the last few years. So I think taking into consideration what the best interest of the child is, what the rights of the child are, that's really affecting and impacting the rate at which family law proceedings are going through the courts right now.
That's very interesting because we're hearing all this talk about parental rights and whether parents even have rights. And if they don't have rights, then who has the rights? Is it the child or is it the state? How do you view these debates and issues?
It's it's a very, very gray area. As far as what I can tell you based on what case law says and what the court system says is, it doesn't matter if you and your partner have a nasty fight. It doesn't matter if you are arguing over who owes child support. The court doesn't care. What they care about is what's best for the children. At the end of the day, the children's interests are way, way more important than what the parents think is in their interests, right? So at the end of the day, the court's always going to rule in what they view as doing what's best and for the most benefit of the children of the relationship.
Hmm. Um, are there any legal aspects to what I was talking about here just a short time ago? Just a story about this journalist was talking about coming out as abrosexual, and so you have these. I guess are there rights that kind of go with those sorts of issues, LGBTQ, S plus issues, or do you have do you deal with any of that those kinds of things?
I haven't dealt with it in my practice personally. I can imagine though that that is something to consider, right? Now you have children as young as 14, 15, 16, changing sexes, changing genders. And I think at the end of the day, if you have one parent in a family law dispute that's against it, but another parent that supports it, I think the court's in a really difficult position to try and decide what really is the best thing
Hmm.
for the child, right? At the end of the day, they want what's best for the child, but how do you decide that when there's conflicting science, there's conflicting evidence, there's faith and religion and your own belief that goes into it, right? How do you
Yeah.
decide that? I can imagine it's very, very complex and convoluted.
Yes, and you have changing technology, changing medical capabilities, and how does that mesh with, you know, current case law? It becomes very complicated when you have a changing society and changing technologies. How does that mesh with the current law? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, it's hard to say, right? At the end of the day, the courts are developing as quickly as society is developing, but I think the sanctity of humanity still remains at the core. And I imagine that now that there's certain areas of law like human rights law, LGBTQ law that's developing, I think that will change the trajectory of how the courts go about assessing the outcome of certain cases. But I think it's a little bit too soon right now to really know what will happen. And I think, political sway also plays into this as well. I think based on what parties and leadership, I think that also affects certain decisions that are made too.
Right. And you, as a lawyer, I mean, you just have to deal with the law. Your personal views on these issues may not even really necessarily come into play. It's about serving your clients properly and interpreting the law the best that you can in order to provide the best services to your clients. So, but anyway, you slice these issues, they're minefields.
Hmm. They're really complicated. And you're right, right? At the end of the day, you have to go in, you have to do your job. You can't let personal biases come in the way. And that's the hardest part is, not bringing your own thoughts and your personal feelings to the forefront of what you're doing.
Yes. Real estate, there's another area of change, I would say, because, we're even seeing in the federal budget what are they calling it, a renter's bill of rights that they're trying to bring into play. So, what's new on the real estate law front, that included?
One of the biggest things I'll tell you right now is I'm not sure if the audience is familiar with this, but there is something called a notice of security interest, which is a lien on a property, which, if you're ever trying to sell your home, you have to pay it out. And it can be a substantial sum of a debt that you have to pay out that you might not even know was on the property. So the Ontario government specifically, they're working on a bill right now to eradicate all of these notices of security interest from title to the property of all of Ontario. So all homeowners that have one right now, the Ontario government is looking at wiping them out completely. So that debt is completely erased from your property.
Oh, I mean, these a lien, it's like a lien on a car, a lien on anything. it could really mess you up if you're not dealing with a professional like yourself, because you might walk into a financial mess.
Oh, absolutely. And the worst part of it is, right, a lot of these people don't even know that they're even on the property until they go and they try to sell their homes. And then it takes them by surprise because they're sitting in, a sinking ship with a ludicrous amount of debt that they didn't even know was there.
Right. Are you comfortable taking some phone calls from people if they call in with some questions?
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely. I would love
all right.
to.
All right, so the number's on the bottom of the screen there, folks. You can call 1-519-401-1373. I'll run the little promo here again. We'll take a short break, and hopefully when we come back on the other side, somebody will call in and we'll take a couple of phone calls. Hang on, we'll be right back. Okay, Mavericks, it's call-in time. Join the conversation. Call now, 1-519-401-1373. One 519-401-1373. Exercise your right to free speech. That's 1-519-401-1373. That's 1-519-401-1373. Maverick News. Call now. The world is watching and listening to you. And we're back, and you can call 1-519-401-1373 to join the conversation. This is your opportunity to speak to a legal expert and get some information, some tips on any of those areas: real estate law, family law, and even immigration law. The immigration thing, that's, it's a growing area. With the numbers of people coming into the country, is that presenting any special problems or challenges for lawyers like yourself or your industry?
Absolutely. Especially right now, given the large number of refugee claims that we're seeing, the Immigration and Refugee Board is extremely backed up. So if you are someone that's trying to claim refugee status, if you're waiting to hear about a hearing or going for an interview, it takes an extremely long time. I have files that have been sitting there for 6 months untouched just because you're not hearing back from anyone. And there's a very, very intense backlog just in the immigration system right now.
So if someone who would normally come to you, would you possibly get like families coming to you who want to bring relatives over, for instance?
Absolutely, yes. So we get families looking to bring, grandparents. I think that's the biggest one, is grandparents trying to come in, mothers, fathers, anyone that's close to them, even if it's just to visit or whether it's to bring them here permanently. We kind of see everyone looking for some kind of service.
Okay. And are you seeing any clients from like war zones, for instance, like Ukraine?
I have dealt with some coming in from Bangladesh right now. They're experiencing a lot of political unrest. War zones I have not experienced myself yet, but a lot of the countries that we're dealing with is political unrest.
Hmm. What communities are you mainly focused on, and where are the sort of where's where are most of the new Canadians going, or is there a mix?
So it's kind of a mix, depending on what they want out of their life and the lifestyle that they want to achieve. A lot of the times when you're coming in, you don't really have an option of where you're going to live as a refugee. It's kind of your port of entry. You're stuck in that area until you get a determination. But one thing is that if you are looking to immigrate, be honest with yourself about what kind of lifestyle you want, where you want to live, and where you want to work. I think if you give us that information, it makes it a lot easier for us to help you achieve and attain that life and that placement that you want.
Now, when I was speaking with your partner, Raj, he was saying, that people really need. He says, you want to promote Canada, but at the same time, you also want to send a message out to people to say, be honest with yourself, really do your research to make sure that this is the place that you really want to move to, because there may be things here that are unexpected. For instance, the cost of living and inflation is an issue here right now. Can you comment on that?
Yes, I think one of the biggest things right now is it's a glorified nation to live in. You see it in movies, you see it in TV shows, but you don't really know what the reality of it is until you come here. Especially now with the high cost of, like you said, just with inflation, food, gas, housing, even education right now. If you're trying to come in on a student visa, you can expect to pay triple the amount of what a regular individual who is from Canada pays. And I think are these are things that they don't expect, but when they come here they're taken aback, they're taken by surprise, and it's a really difficult adjustment to come to a country where a lot of us might be living on minimum wage, but we have to feed a family, we have to buy a home, put a roof over their heads. It's very, very difficult, and a lot of individuals don't necessarily know that's what they're coming into when they're applying for these things.
Wow, that's a very interesting thing that you just said. I've heard that many times that people coming here, education, for instance, you'll pay a lot more if you are coming from another country to get the same education here. That would surprise a lot of people who have, like myself, who have lived here all my life. People, I think, have this misconception that people coming from other countries kind of pay the same. But explain why someone coming from another country would pay more for educational services.
So I don't recall what the statistic is, but international students are one of the highest driving factors of our economy. And that is exactly why they pay so much money. They could be extremely qualified back home. They could have done the exact same degree as I have, but they still have to come here. They have to go through an intense licensing process. They have to prove themselves, and they have to spend, like I said, 3 to 4 times the amount of money a regular Canadian citizen would have to pay. And it's all just to drive the economy and to kind of promise a very lucrative life for these individuals. They come here, they get an education, they're pushed into the workforce right away. And that's their kind of promise to be in Canada. But again, it comes at a really, really high price. And for some people, is it really worth it at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, well, you've touched on something that reminds me of something that I learned when I was very young in school, and it reminds me of these advertisements that went out to the first Europeans who were encouraged to come to Canada, and the advertisements were completely misleading because they showed palm trees and, luxury tropical living, and when they got here, they nearly froze to death.
That's how
So
you do it.
So is that what's going on? Maybe not to that degree, but in other countries around the world, or is Canada being promoted through advertising to get people to come here? Is the Canadian government trying to get people to come here through advertising?
Oh, for sure. So, I mean, I would say a few months ago, you had Prime Minister Trudeau announce his quota for bringing in immigrants by 2030. I think it was like 554,000 immigrants. So there is marketing, there is promotion, and Canada is one of the five main countries that's targeted and marketed towards individuals from overseas, especially when you look at individuals from like India, Pakistan. When you're trying to immigrate to other countries, Canada is one of the main countries that's always on the roster for a lot of people. And I would heavily put that towards the government's marketing. You come here for a better life for you and your family, right?
Hmm.
So there's no doubt in my mind that there's a lot of marketing that goes into Canada being a nation to come to.
And when people get here right now, a lot of them, I would think, give me some feedback on this, trying to find a place to live because we have a housing crunch.
Absolutely. And that's one of the most difficult things, right? Is you're coming here, especially for individuals that are driven to come to Toronto. That's kind of a central hub for a lot of people because it's so diverse. There's a lot of different communities here. They come here expecting it to be like home. They have people here, they have their communities, they have the groups that they will fit in with. but then they're met with these crazy, crazy prices for rent, for car payments, for just basic necessities of life. And it's very difficult to be in a place like that.
So Magic Moon, because not everybody wants to phone in, but Magic Moon is in the chat saying international students are driving the economy. Magic Moon wants to know how. Can you explain something about
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. That's a really great question. So, for the government, it's sort of an investment. They're bringing in these international students. Typically, they'll be in areas such as computer science, general sciences, health, accounting, some type of engineering, for example. They charge them, like I said, triple the amount of tuition, and they're promised to go into the workforce right after. So Canada's aim is to try and bring in all of these international students to push them into the workforce, to develop the workforce. Whether it's successful, whether it's not, that's a question to be determined and to be assessed. But that is the goal that Canada has in bringing in these international students.
Yeah, I do hear from some new Canadians that, and this would surprise some people, especially people who have been here for a while, maybe a few years or whatever, but even a lot of new Canadians feel that the level of immigration is too high because it's like the systems can't cope with the flood of people coming in, not enough houses, educational institutions, our schools kind of being overwhelmed, our healthcare system being overwhelmed. Is this a concern for new Canadians coming in?
Definitely. And I think this goes into one of those things that they don't necessarily know about when they're applying to migrate here. They don't really know what it's like to come on the other side and see what is really going on. And I think that's, if you're a good practitioner, that's something that you would disclose to your client to let them know the realities of what life here would be like. You have to let them know about the pros and the cons. You have to guide them through the entire process to see if that's something that they truly, really do want to do. And I think right now, like you mentioned, there is an influx of migrants, but Canada does not have the capacity to withhold that substantive amount. And that's why we're trying to focus on the need of the Canadian economy, the need of businesses. We're not trying to do mass migration because at the end of the day, we don't have the resources to support that.
Yeah, and it's important that if you encourage somebody to come to a new place, that when they get here, they are going to be able to live properly and they have a home and um, you know, and a doctor and all the things that families need to grow and prosper. And Steve here says halal mortgages has been proposed by liberals. And I know out in Alberta, for instance, they have, I don't know how familiar you are with what's going on out there. Maybe it's happening here in Ontario as well. But um, halal mortgages to sort of deal with people from, the Muslim community whose religion, I guess, sort of they don't approve or they don't approve of paying interest. So they have different financial tools. Are you familiar with that? Can you speak to that at all?
So I have seen personally in my life, I've seen independent companies providing these types of mortgages. So especially in the Greater Toronto area, you have brokerages that are run by these individuals that practice halal mortgages, and they provide those to their communities. I have not seen it past that though.
Okay, it is a fairly new thing as far as I know, and I know that Alberta is sort of on the cutting edge of addressing this issue to accommodate those communities. Is Ontario doing anything similar at all here yet, or are you just hearing rumblings about it?
No, it's mostly been rumblings and nothing's been confirmed. I'd love to see some kind of confirmed news about it. I think that would be interesting to see what exactly is going to happen. So not everyone's kind of sitting in the dark, figuring out
Right.
what's going to go on with it.
Well, Robert Matt says that people should bring hockey sticks and some skates. And I agree with that. Is there much of a culture shock? There must be for people coming in here. And hang on, we have a call coming in. So let me just see if this
Sure.
is. Here, let me bring you on. Who do we have? Who's joining us now? Go ahead.
I'm Rosie.
Hello, Josie. I hope everybody can hear
Rosie,
you
Rosie, it's
okay.
Rosie, ROSY.
Sorry, go ahead. I didn't quite make that out.
Okay. Actually, I would like to ask that I am interested in the question I am asking is about immigration. My uncle wants to come. He's a carpenter and he is very much interested in coming to Canada. And I would like to ask that how can he come?
Sure. I mean, that's a really great question. It's a loaded question for sure.
Yeah, she's
Uh,
answering. You can't hear her. You'll have to listen on your computer to hear um, to hear the answer. I'm sorry, it's difficult for you because you can't hear our guest. But go ahead and
Okay.
answer. Go ahead and
Shall I disconnect the call because I'm watching from the phone?
yeah, sure. Go ahead and disconnect the call, and she'll give you the answer now. Okay.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much,
All right.
Rick.
Thank you. Thanks for
Thank you. Bye.
calling in. Go ahead. I'm
all
sorry
right.
about that.
So, like I said, that's a loaded question for sure. And I can't really give out legal advice right now. So I would encourage you to call the toll free number. That's our direct line. What I will say though is that there is again a need for certain skilled workers, depending on your uncle's experience, schooling, the years that he's worked in the industry, and how qualified he is, mixed with external factors. We can properly sit down, do an assessment, and see what kind of class he could qualify for, and if that's something that we really need right now, if Canada's in dire need of that type of position and that type of skill, then we can sit down and chat about how we can bring him here if that's the right fit for him.
Are there government programs to help bring people in?
Yes, definitely. So Canada is always implementing new types of pilot programs, new types of what I would call, I guess, guinea pigs, to try and see if certain programs are the right way to address the deficiencies that we're experiencing in the workforce. So you have select individuals or select countries that qualify for these programs based on where you're coming from, what your experience is as well. And based on the needs of the program and the qualifications, plus the individual, we're able to better assess if you're a good fit for it or not.
Yeah, Chuck the Canuck says international students had to take advantage of food banks. And I have seen stories like that where, again, students come here and they found some unexpected problems and challenges. And I guess the
Yeah, I
economy
mean,
not as robust as they were hoping.
no, and I think that's definitely an issue, right? That is difficult to deal with. I think a lot of people do come here expecting education to be easy, expecting it to not be as expensive as it is. And they end up here and they're faced with the reality of it. And they're left with no other option to do those sorts of things, unfortunately.
And with students, what are the issues surrounding employment, like even part-time employment while they go to school? What are the rules?
So there's definitely certain rules based on education and work. They're not allowed to be working and in school at the same time. You're not able to do that. You have certain periods where you might have graduated and you're waiting for, your results to come in. You're able to temporarily work there. So there's a lot of nuances with this type of thing. And if you're a student who is looking to continue your journey in Canada and be in the workforce, in the Canadian workforce, that's something we're able to help you with, to understand when you cannot work, how to apply for your visa as well, because it's a bit of a, like I said, nuanced application process.
Yeah, some people I've heard say many times that we need people to come from other countries because we don't have enough skilled labor, or the people coming in will do jobs that we can't do, or Canadians don't want to do. Um, what areas of expertise are you focused on mainly? We've talked about doctors and nurses, obviously. What are some of the other areas that are coming up short in terms of labor?
So the biggest one is definitely professionals. So your engineers, your, like I said, healthcare professionals. But the other one as well is farmers. So there's a big shortage of farmers right now, and that's super important when you're looking at across the prairies, you have grains. In Ontario, you have so much produce that you're producing. Alberta, you've got your livestock, you've got your cattle. There's a huge shortage of farmers and laborers just in general in this specific area. So we're also looking to bring in those individuals because these are very intense positions, very low pay positions as well, that not a lot of Canadians are willing to do. They're very long hours. So that's something that we're looking to also introduce.
Yeah, and a lot of the people coming in to do that kind of work, they're sort of here for a season, then they would go home and then maybe come back, and they kind of go back and forth. I live in a farming community, so I'm somewhat familiar with what goes on there. What are the challenges specifically for people who are engaged in that kind of employment that's seasonal and they come and go?
So I think the biggest thing with those types of employments is that there's not a lot of regulation. So when you have certain employers that are extremely abusive, that don't abide by employment standards or labor codes, it makes it difficult for these workers because they're here temporarily, but they don't know what their rights are. They're still technically entitled to be treated like humans and to have certain rights. But a lot of the times they don't know who to approach. They don't know the language. They don't even know if how they're being treated is okay or not. So you have these severely underpaid, overworked individuals, and that's the biggest issue that they experience.
Yeah, well, I've done stories in the past when I was at CTV talking to, oh, there's a gentleman I know here who has worked for years to sort of represent immigrant or migrant farm workers to make sure that their rights are protected, kind of a union guy. And, he's been pretty active on that front. Um, just checking in the chat here to see what else people are asking about. What is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you want to focus on?
Let me double check. I'd like to touch upon contingency based files as well.
Okay, what is that? What does that mean?
So, contingency files is something that we offer. And what that means is that if you don't have the money upfront to pay for a lawyer, we don't charge you. We'll carry your case through. And based on the reward that you receive in the end from the courts, we take a percentage of that. So, if you are in a position where someone's wronged you and you want to sue them, I'm talking specifically civil litigation going to court, and you don't have the money up front to pay for a lawyer, that's okay. We'll do it on a contingency basis. We'll assess the merits of your case. We'll assess the strength of it. We'll take you through the entire process. We will not charge you for our time on it. And in the end, based on what you're awarded, we only take a small percentage of that award as our legal fees, and you are able to keep the rest.
I see. And I think you also work on, is it real estate? No, there's an area where you work sort of like pro bono with financial things, right? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so we do also do pro bono work as well. So we obviously believe in giving back to the community. We understand, it's very difficult right now given the current state of Canada, the economy, inflation. It's really, really difficult to afford legal professionals. So we're taking initiative to give back to our communities. We're trying to take on pro bono cases as well, where we do your case, no charge to you, depending on, your financial status, your familial status, based on your citizenship status as well. All sorts of things we take into consideration, and we offer our services at no cost.
I see. I'm not sure really where to go from here. The A lot of people, just overall, they're concerned about the levels of immigration coming into the country, and that's really a political hot potato. Um, I don't even really know what to say about it. I mean, I see some concerns expressed in the chat. I hear it in the news all the time. What are your thoughts on it?
I mean, I do agree with the concerns. I think like I said, there's an influx of migrants, but we just don't have the capacity for it. And I think what we really need to focus on is addressing the issues within our borders first. We have people that are homeless, people that are disabled, individuals that need that funding to live a successful life. I think we need to really focus on those issues. And I think when it comes to immigration, we need to step away from this mass migration, just bringing in anybody that we want to. But I think we need to focus, like I said, on quality people that will contribute, that will make the entire country better, thrive, and build and boost the economy a lot more. I think, there is cause for concern for sure. But I think if we harness our resources and focus on what we really need as a society, that's how we're able to control these numbers of mass immigration.
Yeah, and that's why I think too the service that you're providing and what you're actively involved in with your partner Raj is is really a positive thing for the country because you are really trying to bring people here who can contribute in really substantial ways to improve their communities and the country as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we've been wanting to do since day one. And, I hope with everyone's continued support and us just working together, we're able to do that and create a thriving community.
Okay. Wafa, is there anything else you'd like to add or think that I might be missing before we wrap things up for tonight?
No, no. Thank you so much for having me and for this opportunity to share things about the firm with everyone tonight.
Absolutely my pleasure and privilege. And please tell people again how they can get in contact with you if they'd like some more information and some legal advice.
Absolutely. So the toll-free number that's right under Khan-Sehgal law on your screen, you can reach out to that number between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. It will directly connect you with myself or my business partner. And we do have a live website as well. It's khansegallaw at .com. You're able to request consultations, send us an email. And for anyone that was attending today and watching us, if you do reach out to us, we will be offering free 20-minute consultations as well if you do have a legal issue you wanted to discuss.
Outstanding. And for in case anybody's confused out there and you don't realize who Wafa's partner is, it's Raj, who's been on the program in the past. Our friend and contributor Raj, who hasn't been on in quite a while because he's pretty busy with with his legal work, his paralegal work, and I think he's the president of the Ontario Paralegal Association now as well. So
Yes, he is. He's
yeah,
staying busy. Raj, he can't
yeah.
sit down.
That's right. So give my best to Raj. We miss him here immensely. He's very popular with everybody around here, and we can't wait to have him back on. And we'd love to have you back on the program again at some point. And when you do come back on, bring Raj with you, okay?
Absolutely. I will. Thank you again very much.
Thank you. All right, folks, we'll be right back. Stay with me. The show will continue. And thank you again, Wafa. It's been a privilege.
Thank you.